Welcome to another day in the Matrix. This is Waters Above, and what a wild month it's been for these markets. Crazy volatility, polarizing narratives, peak fear, and mass confusion. The perfect recipe for the market maker to do what they do best. And it's in this exact environment we're in now that we see the final phase of the cycle and what many crypto investors are hoping for, which is the alt season, and I expect that moment is coming soon. But first, I believe the market maker has one more trick up their sleeve, and that's exactly what we're going to cover in this video so that you can be prepared for what will happen first before we officially move into a confirmed alt season. So if you're new here at Waters Above, we're empowering you to unlock your infinite potential with esoteric investing by combining Gamatria, numerology, and astrology with technical analysis to understand these markets and become a more profitable investor. Now, before we dive into today's video, I have a really powerful opportunity for those that are interested in taking things to the next level in more ways than just investing in the market. And you're finally ready to make the best investment any of us can make, which is the investment in yourself. And I know that you can see the way the world is headed with more AI being weaponized against us by the technocrats as they give us more promises about a supposedly brighter future. Meanwhile, it's the waiting game that's actually preventing us from living from our purpose and acquiring the skills to become self-reliant. And to me, that's way more important than investing in crypto. And with having significantly more experience as a business owner and a coach and a mentor to hundreds of clients compared to my experience as a crypto investor, and the fact I can clearly see the way the world is headed with more reliance on machines and AI doing the thinking and creating for people, and the human's creative essence unfortunately withering away in the process, this had me motivated to create Waters Above University to provide a solution to this inevitable future that we're heading into, and ultimately so that I could help you unlock the creator within you and teach you how to monetize your passion. And if you need help discovering your passion, don't worry, we have you covered there too. So go ahead and click the link in the description of this video or in the pinned comment below and check out this sample video of our university. It'll give you a preview of the 9-week accelerator program that's included with your enrollment to our university, and it'll also include moments from our group coaching calls, which is another perk included in our university. So if you want to work closer with me in our university community, then you can secure your spot today before our enrollment period closes down at the end of this week. And at this time, we're not sure if we'll be reopening enrollment again later this year. So if you want to take advantage of this opportunity, this is your chance. And by the way, enrolling in our university is a one-time payment for a full year of access, making it less than the cost of a cup of coffee a day. So this is incredible value for everything that you'll get by joining our university. And I'm looking forward to you joining me on this new journey and making 2025 the most transformational year of our lives. Now let's take the clear pill and get into these charts. And of course, as always, I have a powerful decode to share with you all that reveals some key dates ahead that you'll definitely want to be prepared for. So let's start with this chart here, which is a chart that I covered in my last video, and I'd like to follow up on that now, since we've seen a change of character in these markets after the shakeout between April 6th and 9th. And for those that are new here at Waters Above, what you're seeing here is a comparison to what Bitcoin's been doing since its breakout into price discovery back in early November at the end of last year, and what could very well be a textbook Wyckoff reaccumulation schematic, which is below the Bitcoin candles, which so far is playing out pretty much identical to what that schematic is showing us below. And as long as Bitcoin holds the 80K level as a macro support on a macro close, we're pretty much playing out perfectly. So essentially, as long as Bitcoin holds above 80K on a monthly close, then all we're experiencing lately was just the typical 30% mid-cycle correction Bitcoin is known for, especially during price discovery, which it's in right now as we speak. For those investors that were back here during 2017, 2016, you remember that Bitcoin had about 8 30 to 40% mid-cycle corrections as it was breaking out through price discovery. So this would technically be our first in price discovery. That's why I say it's a typical 30% mid-cycle correction. So quickly, we can address the difference between what we'd call the spring or the test here in phase C of this Wyckoff schematic, because it definitely changed since my last video. So we're just following up on this, adjusting as we go. And although technically the spring is the lowest point of the correction during this reaccumulation phase, we do need to remember that this is crypto we're talking about. And that type of volatility didn't exist back when Richard Wyckoff was alive. So since I've been utilizing the Wyckoff method for 5 years now, I wouldn't personally be splitting hairs over this single daily close that we got on April 8th with the lower low, especially since it was a day where the entire market reacted to an exoteric event, what they called Trump's Liberation Day, which we will be decoding a little bit later. But whether the drop on March 10th over here is the true spring, or you'd want to call the recent drop on Liberation Day over here the true spring, doesn't actually matter much to me, because all that actually matters is what are the probabilities that this is in fact a reaccumulation playing out and not a distribution, which for those that aren't aware, a distribution would mean that this push up that we're getting now is actually a lower high, and we could anticipate yet another lower low to come next. That would actually push us into what could be a confirmed bear market, which I personally do not believe is the case. And based on my analysis, I'd only put about a 20% chance of that happening, maybe even lower. But let's say on the higher end, about a 20% chance of us getting rejected here and pushing even lower than where we just were into an actual confirmed bear market, which I do think we would have to go significantly deeper for that to happen. We'd have to start trading like below 60 K Bitcoin. But for now, let's just take that step by step, because I want to clarify my take on things. If I had to explain what the other 80% chances would be, I'd say that I also see about a 20% chance that Bitcoin actually continues to break out into new all-time highs now without a pullback in the short term. So that's 20% that we would go much lower than where we've already corrected to. 20% that we're actually now just going to continue up from here and break out into 110K. And the other 60% would be what I'm actually expecting, which is another correction around and after the upcoming new moon. So I'm literally going to break down the exact dates that I see this all playing out, and I'm telling you the exact direction. And that's where today's decode comes into play. But quickly, for those that aren't aware, here on this channel, I'm using the moon phases to determine what the market will do in the future before it happens, which amazingly has a very high level of accuracy. And if I turn on the moon phases indicator, which I'm going to right now, you're going to see some blue dots and some white dots. The blue dots are the new moons, the white dots are the full moons. And you can actually track everything that I'm saying yourself if you'd like. It's a free indicator here on TradingView. And if you want a free course that actually teaches you how to use this moon phases indicator, you can go to watersabove.com/free. So one thing that I teach regarding the moon phases is that you need to consider a window of plus or minus 5 days around the full moon or the new moon. And if you were to just look at the last two corrections that we had over here, I'm going to turn off all the drawings so you could just see the candles and the moon. And you're going to see that we actually bottomed out literally 5 days before the full moon. Here we got about 4 days on both sides. So within that window. Also, if we were to look at the last two new moons, which are the blue dots, and you were to go and see where we topped out right here and also right here, you can see on day 5 where we would be. If you were to actually have sold 5 days before the past two new moons, you would have been out at a peak before a major sell-off. And then if you would have bought 5 days before a full moon, you would have caught the lows. So now that we've passed through a full moon on April 13th, and we're now heading towards a new moon on April 27th, this means that technically, as of right now, when this video is being recorded, we're in the 5-day window around the new moon, right? And if we go to the chart here, I want to show you just the moon phases. If we were to go to this chart, I'm actually going to zoom in. I'm going to turn this back on so we could just leave this chart the way that it is. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to turn off everything so we only have the moons and the drawings. And you're going to be able to see this is around New Year of 2024 up till today. Most new moons follow with a correction. It's been the case this whole year. It was the case last year. Every time we get a blue dot, we're seeing a fall in price. As you can see, over and over again, with a couple of examples that aren't the case, but it's much, much fewer. We're talking about like 80% of the time. After a new moon, we have a correction. So the question is, will this time be different? Also, another thing to mention is, should you rely solely on this indicator? No, especially if you don't know how to use it, right? This is why I told you about watersabove.com/free. You could learn how to use this indicator a little bit more in a sophisticated way. But getting back to this, as I was just mentioning, question is, will this time be different? Will we just continue to pump and pump and pump in the short term? Well, I personally don't think so. And let me show you why. So now that we've made it all the way through the April 7th date, what Trump was calling Liberation Day, perhaps some of you remember me mentioning to watch out for this exact date of April 7th. This is from Decodes that I released months in advance because April 7th was the 97th day of this year. And we got this 97 from our year of the snake decode that I released on my Patreon in late January this year, 2.5 months before the date. And I talked about it also in YouTube videos here. And the reason I put emphasis on this number 97 is because we're in the year of the snake, and the snake is the serpent. So here we're utilizing Gamatria, and in our basic ordinal cipher, where ABC equals 1, 2, 3, you add up what this word is and you get 97, symbolic of this exact date that we're talking about, which turned out to be Liberation Day. Also, this 97 matches crypto in the same cipher, and that's what we're talking about here on this channel, focusing specifically on decoding the crypto market using Gamatria, numerology, and astrology. So as you can all see, there's a method to the madness because this ended up being one of the most important days in the entire history of the market, and the fact that I was able to identify this exact date before Trump even announced reciprocal tariffs and also before he called it Liberation Day, that proves I couldn't have possibly used any exoteric elements to determine the significance of this day. It was purely discovered using my decoding system, which I teach in my decoding mastermind course, by the way, at watersabove.com. So now that this day has come and gone, and we've seen what it did to the market, let's connect some more dots. And this is what we're going to do to find a future date of significance. We're going to be starting with the fact that this entire event on April 7th had to do with Donald Trump. And perhaps you're all well aware, he's the 47th president of the United States. And this happened on the Gregorian 4/7 date, 4/7, which is internationally written as 7/4, which by the way also ties to the 4th of July, which we'll cover that in a future decode, but I've already talked about it on my Patreon recently. So there's something incredibly symbolic about this 4/7 and 7 code, and that means 4th of July this year. Definitely a significant date, and it will affect the market for sure. Cryptos for sure, because the traditional markets would be closed, right? But that's besides the point. Let's get back to this 4/7 connection. We have the date written internationally as 7/4. And what price did Bitcoin correct to on this exact day? 74K. Let me show you, just so you know. We can't make this up. So we have here, bottom price on 4/7 date, 74K Bitcoin. You could see it right over there to the side. Can't make this up. So now that we've had this undeniable evidence that this code works and that this is the code that runs these markets, I believe we need to continue to keep this number 47 in mind for the rest of our decodes, for the rest of this year, and potentially for the rest of Donald Trump's presidency. And I'm not saying that to like kind of hype something up, like I'm serious about that. Now, if you're a Patreon supporter of mine as a member of our mastermind community, then you're aware of the date that I'm about to point out, since you've actually known about this date for at least 3 weeks now. So if you're interested in more behind the scenes decodes and want more frequent updates, then you could join our mastermind community over at patreon.com/watersabove. And by joining that membership, you'll also get access to my weekly Red Pill podcast. I release a new one every week, and you'll also be able to join our community Discord server, which is included with your membership over there. And for those that are interested in enrolling in our university, I just launched this year and I told you about in the intro of today's video. Well, if you want to save on that enrollment cost, then that's another perk of being a Patreon supporter of mine, since by joining Patreon for only $10 a month, you'll unlock a $55 discount off your enrollment at Waters Above University, which is pretty much like getting your first 5 months of Patreon for free. And then you'll have access to both our university for learning how to generate cash flow and building your own business, as well as our mastermind community, which focus specifically on crypto investing. So definitely want to make sure to take advantage of that opportunity if you want even more value. Now, that date that I want you to keep on your radar is April 29th. So we're going to get over to that date right here, and you're going to see the connection right away because it's tied to two very important dates, starting with April 29th to June 14th, Donald Trump's birthday, whom, as you're all aware, is the 47th president. And you might also be aware that Trump was also the 45th president. And if you add up 4 and 5, you have 9. And then if you add up 4 and 7, you have 11. There's your 9/11 code. When you mirror the 9/11, you have 119. And April 29th is the 119th day of the year, which happens to be 47 days before the 47th president's birthday. As well, it is 47 days after the recent total lunar eclipse, a very significant date that I've been warning about for over a year on this channel. It was the start of our lunar cycle that we've now officially entered since March 14, 2025. It's the reason the market crashed is all because of this total lunar eclipse and the start of a lunar season. And there's some people that have been following the channel now, maybe 2 years, and you can actually go back to videos from that long ago and hear me talking about that specific date of March 14th, which the market crashed into, and we're still in eclipse season as of April 13th, full moon. Now we're out of eclipse season, so that is good to know. But getting back to this, we have 47 days before this significant connection tied to the date that will also be 47 days to Trump's birthday, which interestingly happens to be the 119th day of the year. And because April 29th is landing after our upcoming new moon, this is why I'm expecting a correction to start very soon, and for this correction to be noticeable around the specific date of April 29th. And I'm also expecting this correction to last through the first week of May. So take a note of that. A big reason for that has to do with May 1st this year, which is Mayday. Perhaps some of you are aware. That will be Israel's Independence Day this year, which is changing depending on the Gregorian calendar. Obviously, they're using the Hebrew calendar. It's on 5 Layar, which, as you can see in 2025, Israel's Independence Day will be happening at sunset on the 30th into nightfall on the 1st of May in the Gregorian calendar, what most of you are using here. That is definitely symbolic, the fact that it will be Bavarian Illuminati Day, Mayday. And to get into the specific code for this May 1st connection, we have the 5-1 or 1-5 code, that's 15. And why is 15 significant? Well, remember a moment ago we were talking about 47? Well, let me just show you really quick. Pop this up, 47 days before Trump's birthday. 47 is the 15th prime number. And when you go to May 1st, you're going to see it's not only the 5-1 date or the 1-5 date, it also has a 15 date numerology and a 51 double-digit date numerology, as above, so below. So this is incredibly important to consider. Also, when we're talking about April 7th the Liberation Day, well, that was the start of the 15th week of this year. So I really do think the number 15 is equally as important as the 47. Why? Well, they're tied to each other mathematically. So you're all aware now, the number 47, 15th prime connection. And if we go back to the number 97 that I was talking about a little bit earlier, we had this day of April 7th as the 97th day of the year. Well, 97 is the 25th prime number, and between Liberation Day and May 1st, Mayday, is 25 days. Also, because we're talking about the Hebrew calendar, it's the Hebrew year of 5785, which reduces to 25. This is all syncing together. In summary, I'm expecting a correction for the entire market after this upcoming new moon, which will be on April 27th. And I believe April 29th and May 1st will be significant dates. And since it's tied to Israel and Judaism, we cannot forget the most important number in Judaism is the number 18. Chai. It's the number that symbolizes life and life force. And 29th of April and May 1st will be landing in the 18th week of the year. Very, very powerful stuff. So that's another connection for you to have. Now, returning back to this Wyckoff chart that we were looking at the beginning of today's presentation, since we are entering that 5-day window around the new moon, as you watch this video, keep in mind that this correction I'm expecting can start at any moment. It could start as of right now. I'd say it's the 48 hours around the new moon date that you'd see the significant change in energy if it doesn't happen sooner than that. So that means the 25th of April through the 29th is where I'd narrow down the time frame to anticipate Bitcoin and the overall market to start to cool off a bit from this relief rally and ultimately head down for one last notable correction before the true alt season. And don't worry, I'm going to give you all the specifics as we conclude today's video. So now that we've reviewed my short-term outlook on the energetics of the market over the next week, let's look at some levels that you could keep in mind for how this will play out. And since we have this Wyckoff chart open, we need to discuss the zone between 83K and 89K, since that's been essentially a majority of our trading range over the past 2 months since Bitcoin has broke below the macro support level of 92K. Now, regarding this upcoming correction, I'd say a minimum downside target is 89K. And the maximum target for this to still be considered a bull run, in my opinion, is 78K. Now, I know this is an absurd trading range. It's a 10K range, but that's what we're dealing with. So that's what we have to consider. And we know for a fact that Bitcoin can swipe through all liquidity in either direction very, very rapidly. That's just the nature of Bitcoin and crypto in general. So we need to be prepared for these extremes. And right now we're in extremes with record-breaking market days pretty much throughout the whole past month. And what I said before about the healthy bull run, I'm just saying, like, yes, we could drop even lower, but then it would be looking a little less healthy, right? I did mention before, it would technically have to be a macro closure below 60 to be a full-blown trend reversal. But if Bitcoin was to start closing below that 78K level on macro closes, that would not look good. And we'd have to completely reassess everything that we're covering in today's video, which is fine. But as of right now, I'm sticking to what I'm sharing with you here. So if we in fact completed our test already and have officially moved into phase D, which would be this LPS, this is a healthy pullback to retest prior resistance, which aligns with that 87 to 88K territory. Now, I know I'm about to say something that might sound crazy, so bear with me, but the Pope just died at 88. And on the exact day, Bitcoin hit 88K right after Easter. Also, if you look at the time frame of the last time we traded and hit the same exact daily close, apologies, it was right over here, on March 24th, Monday to Monday. It's 28 days, and esoterically, 28 is 2 8s. 88. It becomes 88. And I believe the Pope's funeral will be on April 26th. Correct me if I'm wrong. So we will potentially be seeing a 88K retest on his funeral. The fact it's the day before the new moon, it wouldn't shock me. So I'm kind of having a little fun here, but I do suspect something like that to go down. Weekends have been really bullish, or sorry, really bearish for the most part. I know this weekend was an exception, but it was also a 3-day holiday for the stock market. We had Easter, Good Friday, etc. So yeah, just kind of a different thing in the mix, but I would be expecting at least the 87 to 88K retest for a standard LPS, a last point of support. Essentially, it's a supply test to the downside from a technical perspective. And that would be the minimum movement. And it'll also fill a lower CME gap that we have around the 92K level, I believe. Now, as for even lower targets, we have a bunch of daily closes hanging out around this 83 to 84K level. And I believe that's actually a more fair target to expect. So if I was to give my opinion on this, between 84K to 88K would be a zone to consider as like the middle of the range. That's more what I'm personally expecting. And then of course we have the inverse head and shoulders play, which would be, if I was to draw it out, kind of like this move down to 78, potentially 80, and then buying back to complete this left head, right shoulder move. That is definitely something we could entertain. Below 84K and as low as 78K, and it would still all look very healthy. And I could imagine a push below 80K can actually be very quick and be bought back up even quicker. And this would be perfectly normal and still a healthy correction. And the only way this would get sketchy is if Bitcoin closed a weekly candle below 77K. So keep that in mind. As of right now, we're looking pretty good. And if it would be also very surprising to see Bitcoin just rage back to 100K and higher in the immediate short term, in my opinion. Of course, anything is possible in the matrix, but trading lower than 74K is more on the extreme side of things, especially since Bitcoin just broke back above 90K. And to anticipate Bitcoin to just go to 100K right now, it's also an extreme, in my opinion. So yes, Bitcoin does look strong right now, but these are usually the moments where the market maker throws a curveball, as I said at the beginning of today's video. I believe they have one more trick up their sleeve. And now you know exactly when I'm anticipating this final correction to happen, which is actually the exact move that triggers an alt season. And before we wrap up today's video, let me show you what that move is on the Bitcoin dominance chart. So going over to here, pull up Bitcoin dominance, get into this. Here we are. Be turning on some of these drawings because they are important right now. I'll turn off the moon phases because they are not important for this analysis. Now I'm going to zoom out and you're going to see we've been trading within this parallel channel now for 2 years, going back to March 2023. And just 2 weeks ago, we actually broke above this resistance and we've back tested to confirm prior resistance as a potential support. This actually happened between April 6th through around April 10th. Or around Liberation Day week. And if we look at a weekly chart, we're going to see something that's very important right over here. I'm going to stretch this out a bit so you can see the full chart nice and easy. You'll see that the last two alt seasons over here and over here were triggered by a sharp surge in Bitcoin dominance up to about 70%, and then it followed by its collapse below around 58%. So you can mark those two ranges if you like, and if it doesn't stop there and actually keeps going below 53%, then get ready because literally almost every altcoin will go absolutely crazy, like big moves to the upside. But first, we're likely to see the sharp surge up from where we're at now, around 64%, up to 68%. And during that move is where I'd personally get ready to expect the alt season. And I'm actually expecting this upcoming correction that I'm anticipating to actually push Bitcoin dominance even higher. And depending on how dramatic the correction is, will determine the spillover from the alts into Satoshis. So to summarize everything we covered in this video, I believe we're going to experience another correction around this month's new moon on April 27th. The key dates that I'm keeping in mind are April 29th and May 1st, but the corrective energy can actually last all the way until May 8th, as far as May 12th, which will be next month's full moon, although I'd expect the bottom of the move to be complete before May 8th. And during this move, when Bitcoin is correcting and bringing down all the other altcoins with it, I believe Bitcoin dominance will go even higher. And then after May 12th is when I'm expecting Bitcoin to start initiating its next move back to the current all-time high of around 109K and actually pushing higher. And I'm expecting Bitcoin to be back at least 100K, at least by the May new moon at the end of May. May 26th, transitioning into the month of June. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. For now, we're in the end of April, and it is important for us to take things one step at a time. And I believe the way I shared my thesis in today's video paints a crystal clear image of what my expectations are in the short term, including price targets and the exact dates that are associated with the direction I see the market heading in. Now, keep in mind, when we're talking about crypto, a lot can happen in just a couple days. So between now, when I release this video, and the new moon on April 27th, sure, Bitcoin could hit 96K. Maybe it even swipes up to 98K with a wick. But as mentioned earlier in this video, it seems less likely for this breakout to continue and go higher than 100K in the immediate short term. And if that does end up happening, I'd be really cautious because that is too quick, too soon. And regardless how this plays out in the short term, I'm still expecting a breakdown in Bitcoin dominance before the end of this summer, especially before the upcoming total lunar eclipse on September 7th into September 8th. It's an eclipse that I've been warning you about here on this channel for over a year. So I'm going to wrap up this video here today. And for those that are interested in my take on altcoins, just know that if Bitcoin corrects, it'll bring down all the altcoins with it, especially while Bitcoin dominance is so high. So if you're an XRP holder, for instance, that's currently saying right now, I don't care about Bitcoin. I don't even invest in Bitcoin. So why should I care about what Bitcoin is doing? Well, realize that Bitcoin will move depending on XRP's move will happen depending on Bitcoin. And during the time that Bitcoin experienced a 30% correction from local highs down to local lows, XRP has had a 50% correction. So if Bitcoin comes down to the 87K level, for example, then I'd anticipate XRP to retest $2 again. For sure. And if Bitcoin is to come to the low 80K territory, then I'd expect XRP back at 190 or even lower, as 180 is still in the cards depending on Bitcoin's price action. Now, don't get upset about that. I know that tends to happen here. When we're sharing this type of analysis, people get triggered emotionally by talking about some price target that's tied to XRP. And guys, this isn't a game of emotions. It's just the game of price levels, liquidity, what's going on in the broader markets. And it's pretty clear that the whole market right now is in a stage of shock. It's not fully ready to just push up into new higher highs, right? I mean, even as of right now, it's pretty much only the Bitcoin chart that's looking really, really amazing. So it has to do with Bitcoin dominance being this high right now. So this is me also. I'm not telling you to wait for some perfect buying target, because some people might say, oh, Waters just said XRP is going to $1.80. No, what I'm telling you is we have some levels to look for on Bitcoin. And if those levels get accomplished, I do think XRP will come back right down to the same levels they were at where Bitcoin used to be just a couple weeks ago. So this is not me saying to wait for some perfect buying target. Just accumulate based on your investment thesis. And if you need help figuring out how to develop your own investment thesis, then that's what our mastermind community is all about. So check out patreon.com/watersabove to learn more. And if you end up joining, you'll unlock access to my What I'm Investing In podcast that I just released a couple weeks ago, dedicated to reviewing my entire portfolio and sharing my investment thesis for the rest of this cycle, including this alt season. And just that podcast alone is worth the entire membership. It's absolutely packed with so much value. I cover over 20 different altcoin charts in that almost 2-hour podcast. So there it is. Now let's see what this market does over the next week, as our upcoming monthly close is just about a week out from today's video. And I believe you're all well aware now of what I'm anticipating. Over the next week, we will likely be seeing a pullback following this new moon I will also have a new red pill coming out this Sunday that will be reviewing everything I'm expecting in our conclusion of the month of April and the breakdown of what I'm expecting as we transition into the month of May. And that could be found at patreon.com/watersabove. And in the meantime, if you were interested in enrolling at Waters Above University, we'll be keeping enrollment open until the end of the week. So have a little bit more time to join us over there on this new journey. And by joining today, you can secure your spot and get started on the introduction of our 9-week accelerator program and also get onboarded into our university community in preparation for our next coaching call I'll be hosting on Thursdays. Again, you can find the link to learn more in the description of this video or in the pinned comment below. And I'm really looking forward to catching you all soon in the next update. And I'm wishing you all an amazing rest of your day in the Matrix. Much love.